Good afternoon, members. For the purpose of the recording, my name is Rachel Keepins and I'm the Democratic Services Manager. The Chair is unfortunately unable to attend the meeting today, so in accordance with the Council's constitution, I will ask the committee for nominations to appoint a Chair. I have been advised that any member of the committee can be nominated as Chair for a one-off meeting. If there is more than one nomination, then it will go to a vote and all members of the committee present will have a vote. Please, therefore, can I request nominations from the committee for a Chair for today's meeting? Councillor Bledsoe.
Could I please nominate Councillor Jonathan Pratt?
Can I have a seconder, please?
Yeah, I'll second Jonathan Pratt, please.
Are there any further nominations, please? Councillor Bledsoe, I assume that's a legacy hand. Are there any other nominations for a Chair today, please? No. Is everyone okay with Councillor Pratt taking the chair?
Aye.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. He's just going to take a seat in the chair and then we will commence with the meeting. Do you want me? Sorry, members, just bear with us. We're just getting the procedure up for the chair.
Okay, thank you, councillors, cabinet members and officers. Welcome to this subject overview and scrutiny committee 3 meeting, which has been convened as a hybrid meeting. The meeting is being recorded and will be available via the council's website to be viewed subsequently. Everyone participating in the meeting will be accessing it either from the council chamber, civic offices, Angel Street, Bridgend, or from remote locations. Should I, as chair, experience any technical difficulties during the meeting, Councillor Colin Davis, which I'm assuming is here, yes, will step in and take over temporarily as chair in my absence, and in his absence, then Councillor Graham Walter will step in. Please can everyone ensure that mobile phones are switched off or to silent mode. Members will have received an electronic copy of the agenda, and I will ask the officer to present a brief summary of the key points. For the record, the agenda can be viewed on the council's website. Officers and members are reminded to refer to the page numbers contained in the public version of the agenda report pack. Members and officers will be speaking at various points during the meeting, and those speaking may switch their cameras on at that point, but I would ask that, with the exception of myself as chairperson, at all other times you keep your cameras and microphones switched off, as this will help to minimise any background noise and interference. Whether attending in chamber or remotely, if any members and officers wish to raise a point or question, they should click the raise hand icon at the top right hand side of the Microsoft Teams window, and I will come to you in the order I receive requests. If you are in the chamber, please switch on the microphone on your desk and speak directly into the mic to allow those who are remote to hear you clearly. Please lower your hand once you have finished speaking. The instant messaging chat button has been disabled for this meeting. So I'll find my agenda. 2 seconds. Move. Okay, so we'll move to agenda item 1, apologies for absence.
Thank you, Chair. We've had received apologies for absence from the Chair, Councillor Paul Davis, Councillor Ian Williams, Councillor Mike Kern, maybe a little late joining the meeting, and Councillor Hugh David, the leader. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Agenda item 2, declarations of interest. I'll start with my own two personal on agenda item 3. My wife is a teacher employed by Bridgend County Borough Council, and a personal interest declare as a member of Majesty's Coast Guard Search and Rescue in Porthcawl. I'll move on to Councillor Nora Clark.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to declare a personal interest in item 3, the MTFS. It's a personal interest on page 42, com 5, where it mentions the RNLI. I'm a volunteer for Porthcawl RNLI. I'm also a member of Rest Bay Lifeguard Club that some of the members will apply for the RNLI jobs during the summer. Also, my son is a Porthcawl RNLI crew member, and he is also a member of Rest Bay Lifeguard Club. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Clark. Councillor Melanie Evans.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'd like to, I'm not sure whether I need to, but I would like to declare a personal interest with regards to CAT transfers, management agreements, as I am a Pencoed member of Pencoed Town Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Evans. Sorry,
Chair. Sorry, could I come back, Chair, because I forgot to mention something. Sorry, it's Councillor Nora Clark.
Yes, of course, Councillor Clark.
Thank you. I've been advised by the monitoring officer to make it clear that I am not involved in any budgetary matters relating to the RNLI.
Yeah, I think that's a wise move. I think I'll do myself with the Majesty's Coast Guard. I'm not responsible for any budgets there. Thank you, Councillor Clark. Councillor Mike Kern.
Thank you, Chair. My apologies, I only just arrived a little bit late.
No worries. Thank you, Councillor Kern. We're on declarations of interest. Councillor Martin Williams.
Yeah, just to declare a personal interest as a member of Coity Higher Community Council. We're in discussions with BCBC regarding a CAT transfer. Okay,
thank you, Councillor Williams. Can I add, as I'm a member of Porthcawl Town Council as well? That would be if we're adding our ones in. Thank you. Okay, I'll move on to agenda item 3. I have the pre-meeting question summary. So we've had our pre-meeting, but as advised, I'll go through the by bullet points.
Sorry, Chair. If we can have the brief summary first.
Yes.
Right. Okay. No, that's fine. Sorry, my apologies. It's going to go to Caris Hord. My apologies. Thank you, Caris.
Thank you very much. Just for the sake of the recording, I'll introduce myself. So I'm Caris Lord. I'm the Chief Officer for Finance, Performance and Change. So the report in front of you this afternoon presents to you the draft medium-term financial strategy for the period 2023-2024 through to 2026-2027. And it also includes within there a detailed draft revenue budget for the coming financial year. Members will be aware that during this year you've received monitoring reports outlining the financial during the year, which have been brought about by a number of factors, including some of the residual cost pressures and loss of income from the pandemic, additional inflationary pressures, and also the impact of the cost of living crisis on both our pay and prices, including in that in particular fuel and energy prices. So the context makes budget planning for the coming financial year more uncertain and more challenging than usual. And in addition to the issues outlined above, the Council is still looking to address issues with regards to homelessness and to strengthen and support social care, which is experiencing increased demand and costs, as well as more complex cases in both adults and children's services. So in section 4 of today's report, the current financial situation is outlined for you, together with the ongoing pressures that the Council will be required to meet in the coming year. Just a couple of key pointers really to note that since 2010, this Council has had to identify £73 million worth of cost reductions in their revenue budget. and also that the principles that underpin the budget and the development of the budget for next year are detailed for you in the report, but in particular, I'd ask you to note that the Council is seeking to protect the most vulnerable people in our community, and also that the Council is seeking to limit financial growth in the coming year. So the anticipated net budget for the year next year is £343 million. And section 4 of your report goes on to detail the particular issues for each service area in the Council. Of particular interest to this particular committee is the public realm budget, where the Council is proposing to spend £22 million on public realm services in the coming year. And this is a challenge for the Council, as it needs to continue to meet public expectations for these highly visible and tangible services, but need to do this within the overall Council budget. So just very briefly for you, Chair, Welsh Government announced the provisional local government settlement on the 14th of December last year. The headline figure across Wales was an increase of 7.9%, and in Bridgend, that's an increase of 7.7% in our Welsh Government funding for next year. Whilst information on specific grants has been made available at an all Wales level, we do not at the moment have that figure at an individual level. So the 23-24 draft revenue budget detailed in the MTFS this afternoon assumes a 6% increase in council tax for the coming year. This increase is less than the rate of inflation and is required to enable the council to meet the considerable financial challenges that we face going forward, not least the potential significant pay and price increases, along with the unprecedented number of unavoidable service pressures facing the council as it tries to support its most vulnerable residents. Going forward, the Council has been given an indicative increase in its budget allocation from Welsh Government of 3.1% for the financial year 2024-2025. Given the scale of the financial challenges going forward, the financial position for the Council has been modelled rather, making some assumptions for those years. And I would stress that this is just assumed scenarios for planning purposes, and these figures will be reviewed during the coming year. So the draft budget for 23-24 is shown in table 6 of this afternoon's report. And in drafting the budget, the following has been accounted for. Cost pressures of £10.7 million are proposed to be funded, and these are detailed for you in Appendix A. Many of these are around costs associated with the supporting and protecting our most vulnerable residents, particularly children, increased demand across many of our services, increased older persons population, which is placing additional pressure on our adult services, and also the impact of the real living wage for the coming financial year. In proposing to fund cost pressures of £10.7 million, there are a remainder of about another £10 million of cost pressures which have not been proposed in this budget. Budget reduction proposals are also included in the budget this afternoon, and they total £3.2 million, and these are detailed for you in Appendix B of the report. Just very briefly as well, the report touches on the capital programme for the coming financial year. Additional funding has been made available by Welsh Government to fund our capital programme next year, but resources are limited. Therefore, no capital bids have been requested for the coming year. However, it is accepted that there are a number of capital pressures that will need financing going forward, and these will be updated when the final budget proposals are presented to Cabinet and Council next month. So this report outlines for you the proposed budget for the coming year and the longer term financial position. These proposals, as you know, are now subject to consultation with the 4 scrutiny committees, and the public consultation actually ended yesterday in relation to next year's budget. So the findings from both of these exercises will be considered when drafting the final budget for 2023-2024. Chair, if I may, I would just like to take you to the recommendations in section 9 of this afternoon's report, which requests that the committee consider the information contained in the report and the attached appendices, and also to determine whether to make any comments or recommendations for consolidation and inclusion in the report to Cabinet on the draft MTFS, including the proposed budget pressures and budget reduction proposals within the remit of this scrutiny committee as part of the budget consultation process. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Caris, for that, and thank you for the work of yourself and your team for this report. Councillor Kern, I've got a hand raised. Is that a legacy one, or are you trying to come in?
No, my apologies, Chair, that's legacy.
No worries, thank you, Councillor Kern. Okay, we've all had the pre-meeting questioning summary. The points that are relevant to this scrutiny committee are highlighted in yellow. However, I will go through all the points page by page in the boxes that they are. So I'll go through them one by one. So pages 3 to 5, background and budget narrative. Have we got any questions on that section of the report? No. Okay, I'll move on. Pages 5 to 8, corporate financial overview. No. Okay, this will be our first yellow one. Pages 12 to 13, public realm. Councillor Councillor Jenkins. Yeah, Councillor Jenkins.
Yeah, sorry, Chair. I wanted to come in pages 5 to 12. I'm sorry, 5 to 8 then.
No, okay, no worries, Councillor Jenkins. We'll go back to 5 to 8.
Sorry, my page, sorry again, Chair. It's on page 9 under the education section.
Right, okay, no, I'm with you. Okay, can we get to that point when we get to it, because that'll be in 3 boxes.
Yeah, my apologies, sir.
That's okay, no worries, Councillor Jenkins. Councillor Clark.
Sorry, Chair, are we on page 12?
Yeah, 12 to 13, public realm.
12? Right, 12 to 13, okay. So, thank you. It's 4.1.5. Reference has been made to alternative delivery models within the Communities Directorate that will continue into the next financial year. In addition to community asset transfers and the city deal, are you able to expand and provide further details on how you intend to develop alternative delivery models, with whom, and which services and what projected savings do you envisage? If that could be answered. I have got other questions on page 12 though, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Clark. Who would like to take that?
Yes, thank you, Chair. For the purposes of the recording, I'm Janine Nightingale, the Corporate Director of Communities. I'm afraid we don't have anything else in the pipeline for the year ahead, Councillor Clark. The 2 that you've outlined are the 2 alternative delivery that we've been looking at. That doesn't mean in the future we won't look at others, but at the moment there is nothing else that we have scheduled for the next year. Hope that helps. Thanks.
Has that answered your question, Councillor Clark?
Yes, Chair, I think it did. Could I move on to my next question?
Yes, of course.
On the same page, the report refers to Bridgend having a significant reduction in the volume of residual waste, which is expected to benefit the council financially over time. Have you quantified how this is, how much this will be, and how likely it will, it will make a return over the term of the medium-term financial strategy? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. I think the person who's probably best to answer this is Zach Shell, and Zach heads up, he's my head of service for those areas.
That's fine.
So if I can bring in Zach, please.
Yes, of course.
Yes, Councillor. To be clear, when it talks about reducing tonnage, it's a reduction on an increase. So what we saw as COVID came along and everyone spent an awful lot of time at home, understandably, the tonnage of domestic waste both waste and recycling went up because a lot more people were in the house and a lot more waste was produced as a result. And gradually, if people have returned to work, we're seeing that coming back down. But it's not a case of it's lower than the base level of where it used to be prior to COVID. It's still higher than that. And part of that is because of what you're seeing now. I'm sat in my house, you know, and like everyone else that's not in the chamber, you know, will potentially be producing waste at home, whereas previously would have been in a workplace. And so that's had an overall effect of there being more waste. We do track it. We have monthly figures and you know, we could share that degree of detail. But I think we need to be careful about that because that I think if it's given the impression that there's a net saving, you know, to be clear, it's still higher than it used to be pre-COVID. It's just an indication that it's moving downwards, and hopefully we get back to, you know, sort of similar to pre-COVID levels.
Okay, thank you, Zach. Does that answer your question, Councillor Clark?
Yes, it does. I've just got one further question on that page, if that's
No
okay.
Yes.
Sorry to be hogging it a little bit.
No worries.
Mention is made that the council's strategy is to retain and maintain the most important public services and make service reductions that will have the least impact across council services. In which areas have been identified as being least valued by the public? What consideration has been given to the fact that it would be a false economy by removing, for example, the waste enforcement, which could possibly lead to more fly tipping, etc., and therefore would be a false economy?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Clark. That's a really pertinent question, actually. All of the service that we provide to the public are important, all of them. I wouldn't want to highlight any particular service that I didn't think was important, because for our residents who receive those services, they are vitally important, whether it be planning or whether it be waste or whether it be litter collection, etc. Now, we've had a very, very difficult time in communities over the last 10 years, and you'll be aware of that. The council's had austerities, it's cut particularly deep in communities, as I know. You know a lot of the background to that. So when we came up with some of these savings, which we had to as part of our MTFS, some of these were very uncomfortable for us. And I have to admit, I am uncomfortable with putting that waste enforcement team forward, because you are right. It will be difficult. Whilst we may make some savings from that team initially, what will happen is not having an enforcement and education team will probably result in waste tonnage going up. As a result, then we'll have to collect that waste and dispose of it, and it'll probably cost as much as the saving itself. So it's an incredibly difficult saving to put up, one that I would like Scrutiny to consider, and one that we are appealing to our cabinet members to consider going forward. Now, of course, the Communities Directorate had a savings target to meet, and this is, dare I say, a non-statutory service. It doesn't mean it's not valuable, it absolutely is, but it's a non-statutory service. It's not something we have to provide, and that's why it's in your savings. But I think you are right. It doesn't come without consequences, and it is likely that if we did remove that team, and I'd like to stress, I don't want to remove that team, because we are now one of the top recyclers in Wales, and we've seen the amount of residual waste that goes to landfill go down, as you've just heard. The amount of recycling has gone up, and that's not coincidental. That's as over the last 18 months, while that team has been in place. They've done an awful lot of good work, particularly in the Wild Mill area, where we know there's been less complaints and the litter problems have been less because of the numerous education campaigns we've done in that area. So this is a very valued team. It's with great pains that I put it up as a saving. It's not something I want to do, and it may very well have consequences. So I would welcome your comments on that.
Okay,
Thank you.
Anything else, Councillor Clark?
Not on that page, thank you, Chair.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Clark. Okay, I'll move on to Councillor Martin Williams.
Thank you, Chair. I had one question on public realm, but there's another question I have now as a result of something Zach said, if you don't mind me asking that, and then I'll go on to my public realm question.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, so Zach mentioned the fact that because more people are working at home, the offices are less full, that there's therefore an increase in waste generated at the household. Is it therefore reasonable to expect a decrease in waste being generated at our offices? And if so, what's the efficiency there? What's the saving there? Do we have an answer to that, or was it just an anecdote?
Thought that might be a Zach answer. Yeah, no.
Happy to come back on that, Chair.
Yes, of course.
Yeah. I mean, when I talked about us as an example, BCBC as an example, you know, producing more waste in the home as opposed to out and about or in work, you know, refer to us, myself as an example, but obviously it's something that applies to everyone that lives in Bridgend and works in a variety of places, factories, shops, you name it. And obviously the benefit that the commercial sector as a whole will have seen from people not producing quite as much waste in the workplace where that is applicable, office work environments more than anything else where they've introduced hybrid working, then those respective sectors will see a small reduction in their waste arisings. As no doubt we will have seen a small reduction in our waste arisings at Civic. But the scale of just our Civic offices compared to the entire domestic network of properties are obviously two very, very different scale issues. So, you know, in terms of the budgetary setting, then any savings in tonnage at the Civic waste production bins, you know, is going to be absolutely negligible compared to the overall, you know, tonnage that comes out of the domestic environment. If that makes sense.
Okay, thank you, Zach. Councillor Williams.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Zach. My substantive question was really regarding alternative delivery models and in particular the use of or partnering with town and community councils, a theme which those who know me will know I've been on about for quite some time. In fact, I first raised it a number of years ago, I think, with the previous director of communities. It is disappointing that it seems the extent of the ambition to partner or work with town and community councils is asset transfers. I think there's an opportunity to capitalise on an appetite that many of our town and community councils have. I'm a member of at least one that has that appetite to do more services. So we could devolve more services to them on whether a licensed agreement or some other model. And I'm thinking grass cutting, litter picking, those sorts of things, and even small civil engineering works, paths, you know, that sort of thing, where town and community councils, for various reasons, can have access to cheaper resource, to volunteer resources, and so on and so forth. And I really do think it's a missed opportunity that we're sort of preoccupied with CAT transfers and not looking at the wider devolution of services. So could I ask what plans there are to consider that? Now, I don't know whether that's for the director or whether that's for our cabinet member, but could I ask what we're doing, because this cost pressure isn't going away.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Williams. Janine has indicated she wants to speak, so I'll let her begin.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Williams. Absolutely, we'd really like to work with community councils going forward. We want to have partnership working with all sorts of third sector community councils. I think the only way we're going to get through this MTFS and move forward is through partnership working. So yes, absolutely. I think the dialogue is open. Let's come and have a conversation with your community councils. I think if next time we go to the Town and Community Council Forum, we can make that offer to the forums to start discussing what collaborative work we could do together, because you are right, if we look at our MTFS going forward, it's going to be incredibly tough. Let's work together. I would welcome that, absolutely welcome it. I think Councillor Spanswick might want to come in on this point, Chair.
Okay, no worries. Can I, obviously, Councillor Gebby's gone in first, or are you happy to concede to Councillor Spanswick? No? Okay, no worries. The Deputy Leader, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. Just in response to you, Councillor Williams, we already have community councils that are out there doing grass cutting and maintenance of unadopted roads and all sorts of things, just so to put that out there. But in reality, it wouldn't be a question for this committee. It should actually come to either full council or come to us as cabinet members, because it's a corporate position on policy. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Deputy Leader. Councillor Spanzik.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think there's always been an appetite for this county borough to work with town and community councils, but it is a two-way process. A good example is the Town and Community Council Fund, which has been there for many years, which allows town and community councils to bid. And there are as the Deputy Leader just said, there are town and community councils already taking on some work, but they do vary from town and community councils, with perhaps have one meeting a month and do very little, to that other who are far more forward-thinking. So it does need a lot of careful thought about what town and community councils can do. They need the staff that they can take contracts on to monitor those contracts. So there's a lot of thought there, but there's never been a reluctance with this county borough. The CAT process is one of several ways of looking at things, and maybe the CAT process needs a little tweaking and looking at it, because that's worked well. There's never been this proposed 500% increase in charges of those that don't want to take it on. That's never changed. It's never been 500%. That was a social media sort of misinformation campaign. But there is a lot of good work going on. There's probably a dozen or more CAT transfers currently being looked at. There's quite a lot already been done, more in the future. But those that don't want a CAT transfer, they can work with town and community councils and with themselves to manage things going forward. So there's a lot of good work out there, and it needs town and community councils to come forward as well and want to work in partnership.
No, I agree. Thank you, Councillor Spanzik. Zach, you've come in. Do you want to speak?
Yeah, I was just going to add to the points already made, in response, Chair, if I may. You know, just to let Councillor Williams know, sort of aligned with that thought process, we did last year also change the job description formally for the CAT officer, who liaises with town and community councils with regard to CAT, to broaden out his job description so it covers broader conversations such as the types that have been suggested. So whilst I've got to admit he's incredibly busy with what he's got in front of him right now, but going forward, you know, it allows for those broader conversations to take place as we look to expand on that type of work.
Okay, thank you, Zach. I'm assuming that's answered your question, Councillor Williams, as your hand is down.
Yeah, sorry, thank you, Chair. And I'd just like to thank everyone, and particularly thank the Deputy Leader for her guidance as to what questions I can ask in which committee. It's very bewildering for a new councillor sometimes.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Williams. We'll move on to Councillor Stephen Bledsoe.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I've made this note under 4.1.5 under public realm, and my question was going to be, are the savings proposed under this MTFS future-proof? But I'm very concerned by what our very under pressure head of department, Janine, has just mentioned in relation to the direct question about the removal of the enforcement team, and the fact that potentially having to deal with such a cut could actually lead to costs being equal to, or perhaps even in excess of, what the proposed savings are. And this falls under my question of savings being future proofed. And I'm quite happy to either do this question now or to do it on when we get to the table. But I would like to know why we have a head of a department who has explained the pressures that that department has been under for 10 years. I've had conversations in relation to the amount of weeds that I'm putting in as referrals, and being told that they were, you know, where we are now is a result of a budget cut from 3 years ago. Why are we being asked to consider a potential budget saving, which in reality offers no saving at all to this council, and in the long term will not only put misery on our residents, but potentially cost them more to deal with the problems that fall out? And I don't want to put any more pressure on Janine. I think I'd like a cabinet member to answer that, please.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Bledsoe. Councillor Spanzer.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Bledsoe. And believe it or not, I agree with you entirely. All of these proposals, when it comes to budget reductions in the Communities Directorate, ideally should not be there after 12 years of cuts this Directorate year on year on year. But across the council, as one council, every directorate has to put forward some proposals. That's not to say they need to be put there to be considered. We've yet to get to the final budget meeting. I think it's 1st of March. Process is now to put your thoughts forward. And this is one area where I personally think it would be a mistake if it stays there. But it's there at the moment, along with other cuts. Some may be slightly easier to make. None of them are easy. They're all going to have an effect. But this one is one that needs careful thought, because I've said it in previous over the years, we make cuts short term, but the long term impact costs more. And this probably is one of them. Well, not probably, is one of them.
Okay, thank you,
It's
Councillor.
there for consideration at the moment.
Sorry, thank you, Councillor Spanzik. Anything to, I've got Councillor Nilo Farr coming in. If you want to wait for Councillor Farr's response, Councillor Bledsoe.
Thank you, Chair. I totally agree with Janine and Councillor Spanswick. You know, there are things here that we don't really want to cut, but we don't have a choice. We have to produce a balanced budget. We've had other meetings where it's quite clear we cannot cut from other departments because of the risk to adults and to children. So we've got to make cutting from somewhere. We can't take this forward and not cut. We've got to cut things, and that's what this meeting is all about. Where can we cut? But we've got a legal duty to produce a balanced budget. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Farr. Councillor Bledsoe, any response there? Are you happy with the answers?
I accept the answers. I'm not happy with them. I mean, you know, on the basis of what we've heard today, we're being asked to consider a budget cut, which at the best case scenario will probably break even, whilst causing misery in our area. And, you know, worst case scenario will cost more than we're due to save. And I do disagree. We do have choices. We have choices on how we fund the MTFS, and we will come on to that later on. I look, when we get to the end of this meeting and we're looking for proposals to send forward, I would certainly like to propose that this budget cut is not considered. It will cause misery in our council for all of us as councillors. And well, it'll probably come up again later. So thank you for indulging me, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Bledsoe. Okay, I think that's I think we're done for this area. So we've got supporting the economy, which is pages 13 to 14. Do I have any questions for this area, please? No. Okay. I'll move on to pages. So I saw a hand go. Yeah, here we go. Right. Councillor Nora Clark.
Sorry, Chair, I'm having trouble with my things here.
Nope.
Trying to raise my hand and trying to lower it. It's on page 22. We've got to that page, have we?
No, we're on 13 to 14, Councillor Clark.
Oh, 13 to 14. Okay, I'll come back in after. Sorry.
No worries. Thank you, Councillor Clark. Councillor Bledsoe, is that a legacy hand or?
No, it's a new hand, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
I have sought guidance on whether this is the appropriate place to ask this question and was told that we can. Given that this part of the report references our contributions to the Cardiff Capital Regional Deal, this council resolved last year to investigate the opportunities to restructure or put on hold our contributions to the Cardiff Capital Regional Deal, which were due to be in the region of about £4 million, alongside other contributing councils, not on our own, but in partnership with other councils. Could I please ask for an update on the progress on that? What's what I'm looking for? The acceptance of my motion.
Okay, Councillor Gebby.
Thank you very much, Chair. I remember your motion coming to Councillor Bledsoe. We did take some legal advice. It would have cost us too much to get out of it, and actually we earn more from Cardiff City Regional Deal than we do spend on it. So yes, we did look at it, and no, we're not cutting it.
Okay, thank you, Deputy Leader. Are you satisfied with that answer, Councillor Bledsoe? Or?
I don't feel that was a fair reflection of what the motion was. The motion was to seek working with other local authorities within the Cardiff Capital Regional Deal to look for slippage in projects which may have led to all authorities being able to restructure the repayment programme. It wasn't about pulling out of the Cardiff Capital Regional deal or questioning the benefits that we get from it.
No, it was about restructuring the Cardiff City Regional deal, and we actually took legal advice on that, and no, we can't.
Okay, I don't want this. I understand that the regional deal is in this part of the papers, but I want to keep it to this budget. Councillor Bledsoe, have you got anything else to say on that point, or are you happy for me to move on? No? Okay, I'll move on to Councillor Martin Williams.
Thank you, Chair. In light of the response by the Deputy Leader there, could we please have a copy of the summary of the legal advice as councillors? I obviously would have to be confidential, but I think we'd appreciate that, given that it goes against the spirit of the motion that was passed last year.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Williams. Deputy Leader.
So, Councillor Williams, I'm very sorry. My legal advice is confidential to me. It is not to all members of this authority. When you actually take legal advice, as I'm sure you're aware, the confidential legal advice is to you and you alone.
Okay, thank you, Deputy Leader. Any response there, Councillor Williams?
Privileged.
No, I understand that, and of course I'm at liberty to take my own. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Williams. Is there any more questions on or responses to pages 13 to 14? No. Okay, I'll move on. We've got pages 9 to 17, but most of these are in the remit of SOC 1, 2 and corporate scrutiny. But is there any questions relevant to this committee that members want to ask? Councillor Jenkins? No? Councillor Jenkins went up?
Yeah, sorry.
Okay,
sorry,
no,
Chair.
Councillor Jenkins.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. On page 9 there's references made, but I understand that the Scrutiny Committee 1 made a recommendation for cutting the proposed 2%, I think, council's reduction in the education budget to make it a 1% cut, and to further probably look at those savings. I'd like to know, if possible, if the Cabinet was of a mind and the budget was set at a 1% cut, it would equate to a £1 million, I think, equivalent funding that would have to be found from the budgetary constraints, I suppose. Although I have a proposal later for where that money can be found. So I'd like to ask perhaps the Communities Directorate or whatever, how that would further impact on communities should that 2% be reduced to a 1% budget.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Jenkins. I think this may be better off dealt with the Education Directorate or at full council, but as the question has been asked, if anyone from communities is willing to ask it. Okay, Janine, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Jenkins. If a decision is made to amend that amount from 2% to 1%, that's if the decision is made, then it'll have to be a corporate decision as to how we reclaim that £1 million. Because we have to balance our budget. I don't think it'll fall solely on communities. It would have to be a corporate decision as to how we balance our budget going forward from that. I don't think I can add anything further there, Councillor Jenkins, because we need to see what the outcome is. So thanks.
Okay, thank
you. All right. Well, thank you. Thanks for that.
Deputy Leader.
Thank you very much, Chair. Councillor Jenkins, thank you very much for your question. Whilst I would say that any budgetary decisions will need to be agreed by Cabinet in the first instance before it is presented to Council. What I would say to you is that schools are not having a 2% cut. A 2% cut is on their flat budget, and any cost pressures in relation to pay they will be funded for separately, irrespective of any grants that they get further on down the line, because we don't actually know what those grants are currently.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Jenkins, you happy with that response?
Yes, yeah. Go on.
Thank you very much, Councillor Jenkins. Okay.
I'll just say I know where to find the money, but
I'm sure Cabinet will be delighted to hear it.
Yep.
So we move on to, if we have no more questions, Pages 17 to 23, so that's financial context, Welsh Government, provisional local government, settlements implications, transfers into and out of the 23-24 revenue, specific grants, current year financial performance, MTFS 23-24, 26-27, and MTFS principles. Councillor Clark.
Yeah, my question, Chair, is on page 22. It says under the MTF principles, there's consideration for future income and expenditure scenarios. Obviously, some are listed in Appendix B. Are there any other services within this directorate which could provide income generation and additional charges?
Okay, thank you, Councillor Clark. Janine? Yep.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Clark. I'm sure if there is a service I can levy a charge on, Councillor Clark, you can be sure that I would consider that. Absolutely going forward. That's a very important principle for us, that we look at all ways to be robust in our income generation. What I would say is that we are incredibly good at is grant sourcing. Over the last month, the Directorate alone has got £41 million into the Directorate. We've got, I think you heard the lovely announcement, I think it's pertinent I say this with you, for the pavilion in Porthcawl. We've got an £18 million LUF bid for Porthcawl approved last week. Fabulous news. And also we've got £23 million for the Shared Prosperity Fund. So we're very good at getting external grants in. When it comes to income generation, we do the best that we can. But here's the thing as well, we've got to remember, it's got to be reasonable, the charges we're making, because what we don't want to do is be prohibitive when we are looking at income generation, so our communities can afford things out there in this cost of living crisis. So hopefully that answers some of your questions.
Okay, thank you, Janine. Anyone else? No. Councillor Clark, to answer your question.
Yes, I'd just like to thank Janine for the answer, and obviously it is wonderful news that we've had these grants in, but it's a shame that we really have to rely on grants.
Deputy Leader.
Thank you very much for your comment, Councillor Clark. I don't think I'm going to say anything new to any of the committee members here today when I say we need to look at Westminster and the amount of money that has been kept from consequential budgets year on year. So over the course of 13 years it is now. The actual levy against Bridgend is 27% of our budget that we have lost in that time. That's a significant amount of money. It doesn't matter how many efficiency savings we have. Actually, the demand for some of our more statutory services is increasing daily. In fact, one of our service provisions is at 200% now.
Thank you, Deputy Leader. Councillor Melanie Evans.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. My question is around the medium-term financial strategy and the principles around a one council approach. Whilst I am all for collaborative working, I fear that too much outsourcing or possibly tier building too many services could have a negative impact, contributing to lack of joined up thinking and eventually not always providing the desired outcome. Under the objective set, smarter use of resources, are you satisfied we are utilising our partners and organisations to their full potential?
Okay, thank you, Councillor Evans. Janine?
Hello, Councillor Evans. Let me take that question for you. Are we using them to their full potential? Probably not. Are we trying to use all our partners to their full potential? Absolutely. I think let's just take one example of our 2030 initiative. To get the public sector has to get to net zero carbon, as you know, by 2030, a monumental task. This is not going to be achieved by the council on its own. It has to be achieved through partnership working because the health board and the police and the fire brigade, etc., all have the same issue as ourselves. So what we have been doing via the Public Services Board is looking at, for instance, projects of mutual benefit. So, for instance, the Bridgend District Heat Network that we're implementing, we're looking at second phases, whether we can introduce that to the Princess of Wales Hospital, so they can have net zero heat there. We're looking at working with Bridgend College for their new campus at Cheapside, whether we can connect that to the District Heat Network. So what we have to do is 100% use our partnership working where we can to get mutual benefit and move forward. Now, we always want to do more. We always want to do more. We always want to stretch out our hands and welcome more. For instance, we want to work more with the third sector. We do quite a lot of work now, and I'm just picking up some examples of Barvo and some of the charities we like to work with, done an awful lot with them, especially through COVID. That's been critical, really. We like to work with our business communities and our education establishments. There are a whole raft of partnerships. Partnership working is at the key of what we do, and collaborative. Now we will have to do much more of that as we go into the future in order that we have a one vision for Bridgend. And another very important example, I think, is in our economic development strategy that we approved earlier on in the year, where we collaborated with lots of businesses for ideas on how to improve our economy and what training and providing we would need. So lots and lots of different angles, Councillor Evans, but yes, 100%. Collaboration is the key. We want to do more, and hopefully we'll be able to as the years go on. So I hope that answers. Thank you.
Thank you, Janine. Councillor Spanzik.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think another two great examples of partnership working has been Halo and Arwen. I mean, the partnership has been quite, 10, 12 years now with Halo. Arwen, there's some great work going on there. Saying that, I'm a firm believer that partnership working, when it works, is great, but we don't need to outsource too many things. There's an argument now, maybe not 10, 12 years ago, that insourcing should be the way forward. There's many services we provide which we can do just as good, if not better, than the private sector. And sometimes in the past, we've been a bit too quick to go for the financial option because it'll save money because of the cuts we have through. So there's a mixture there, partnership working where there's sort of third sector or not-for-profit, great, that works, but not partnership working where it's private sector looking for profit. That's when we need to be looking at insourcing.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Spanzik. Councillor Evans, does that answer your question?
That answers my principle 1. I have one regarding principle 5 or number 5, where it says all services will seek to provide value for money. Can you explain to me, how do you measure value for money, and are you satisfied you are fulfilling this measure?
Janine?
Yes, that very interesting question, Councillor Evans. Absolutely. One of the fundamentals is we provide value for money. Now, there are a number of ways we do this. One of them, critically, is benchmarking. And we have to do this. So what we do is we look at what other local authorities are providing, what other partners are providing, and make sure our service has parity, if not is a better service. Now, sometimes it's difficult to get a better service, especially with our MTFS and the resources we have, but absolutely critical for us for value for money is to make sure we benchmark. The second thing, of course, is we have to do things within a financial envelope, and we have to ensure that we have the best product for the monies that we pay. So, for example, let's take the example of My State Town Hall. There's been an awful lot of debate about that recently. We've had scrutiny committees and an awful lot of looking at that project in particular. Beautiful heritage building, what we have to do, make sure we get value for money from that contract. So what we do know with that contract is we've worked with the heritage operators, we've done an awful lot with Welsh Government, with funders, with CADU, and we are saying to them, what is best practice? What would you want to see in that building? What does that mean for you? Now, what I'm saying is value for money and best practice, I think, go hand in hand. Because if it is best practice, then you are getting the best value for the money you're putting in. An important thing is longevity as well when we talk about value for money. What we don't want to see is something that will give us value for a couple of years. We're talking about sustainability and future generations. So when we are using this money, this capital funding, for instance, we need to ensure that anything we do provides value for the future, for is sustainable and for those, literally for the residents of the future. So for example, the example of my stake town hall, we have to ensure we put everything in it to make it the best it can be so it can survive for the next 60, 80, 100 years. That's important for us. But not just that, it's when we are providing other services and other investment opportunities, such as the work we're doing down at Cozy Corner, for instance. Currently, you'll see the scaffolding is up. If you go and have a drive or a walk around Porthcawl, you will see we're doing an awful lot of work down there. Now, we have to make sure that that is financially sustainable for the future. There is no point putting our investment and Welsh Government's money into a facility. We have to make sure it's net zero carbon, that we can fill those units, and we create a facility that's sustainable for the future. And then that will be value for money, that it can wipe its own face and it can pay for its own facilities, which we're sure it can. So for us, value for money comes in all different forms. It's everything from longevity to working with partners to, just to really making sure that everything we provide has all of those accoutrements in that pot. So it's wide and complex, if that makes sense. But hopefully that gives you a flavour of what we try to achieve.
Okay, thank you, Janine. Deputy Leader has indicated she wants to speak.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you very much for your question, Councillor Evans. I think I'd just refer you to a couple of things. One is that Audit Wales check us as a council every year to make sure that we're spending all our public funding appropriately and as it should be. Benchmarking across, I know that Janine just referenced that. What I would say is that we have done benchmarking exercises across the board, across every directorate in the authority just recently, and we actually look at the spend per capita and how we benchmark against other local authorities about what we're spending on in different areas and on what. And the other thing to note, I suppose, is our regulators. So you're aware of Yestin for schools, you're aware of CIW for social services, but we have regulatory bodies that come in and check us all the time. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Deputy Leader. Okay, thank you. Councillor Evans, does that answer your question?
I have got one more. I'm just conscious. I won't be too long. It's actually on principle point 7. It's about timescales. So what are realistic timescales? What measures are in place to ensure deliverance of the timescales? And what are the consequences of not delivering on timescales? And finally, what are the unforeseen obstacles? I guess the pandemic being one. Can you provide some examples of other unforeseen obstacles, please?
Deputy Leader.
Thank you very much for your question, Councillor Evans. What I would say to you is if you look at the procurement exercises that we undertake frequently, quite often they'll come back. I can give you one example. We put out for tender for a road crossing. We had the tenders back and it was more than double the price. We wouldn't even go there. We didn't do it. It's actually been put out to tender again recently and it came back at a more reasonable price, is what I want to say, within what we were expecting. So that project is now going ahead. In relation to the timescales, in relation to the annual budget, 10 years ago, we would have set our budgets prior to Christmas. You would have been having these conversations a lot earlier. We don't have that opportunity now. Westminster are getting later and later, are giving a consequential to Wales, and subsequently we get those answers as well a lot later. So we will do a budget formulation as quickly as we can in the timescales allowed to us. I think that's answered the majority of your question.
Okay, thank you, Deputy Leader. Councillor Evans, are you satisfied with that answer?
That's fine, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Evans. I'll move on to Councillor Jenkins. Councillor Jenkins?
Oh, I'm sorry, that's a legacy hand. My fault.
Okay,
sorry.
No worries.
Thank you.
Councillor Jenkins. Okay, we'll move on to pages 23, 28 and 29, which is council tax. Do we have any questions for council tax? No. Okay. Next page will be pages 23 to 30, which is the MTFS resource envelope, net budget reduction requirement, managing within the MTFS resource envelope, scrutiny and challenge, 23-24 draft revenue budget, non-domestic business rates re-evaluation, pay prices and demographics, and non-teachers pensions. Anyone? No. Okay, I'll move on to pages 30 to 31, school delegated budgets. No. Okay, pages 39, budget pressures. Councillor Bledsoe.
Can I just check, Mr. Mayor, is this budget pressures 4.21 in Appendix A, pages 41 to 43 that we're on now?
Budget pressures 4.21 and Appendix A on page 39.
Okay. I apologise. It says different on my sheet. We're referring to the public ones, aren't we? I'm so sorry, Mr. Chair. Okay. If I may then, Mr. Chair, obviously we have had these charts put in front of us. There's lots of red, there's lots of amber, there's bits of green, and I don't want to take all of the time on this, but I would like to put 3 of these sections forward for scrutiny by this committee. And if I start with COM 3, which under the wellbeing goals is a more equal Wales, categories PC, charging blue badge holders for parking.
Okay, just to stop you there, Councillor Benson. I'm actually on page 39, but you are on the next proposal that I was going to speak on. I just wanted to check that no one wanted to speak on page 39. Yes, he's he's on budget pressures, not page 41. I just want to, we're going to go there anyway, so your question is relevant, Councillor Betso, so I'll keep it. I just want to make sure no one wants to discuss budget pressures. Councillor Jenkins, did you want to discuss budget pressures?
I'm a bit confused, sorry Chair, we were going through the page numbers, so they obviously don't equate to the hard copies that I've received, because you're going straight, as you called out there, to page 39. I wanted to speak on page, it was 32, get some clarity. That's on my copy of the full report that I've had, these pages, because we're not on the appendices yet, are we?
I'm with you, Councillor Jenkins. Page 32 is council-wide budget, fees and charges. I'll be getting to that in the next couple of stages.
Oh, right. Because when you're calling the page number out, I assume it's a page that relates to me.
Yeah, they're not numerical, but we will get to page 32 soon, Councillor Jenkins. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay.
I'm going to move on to budget reduction proposals. Councillor Betso has already asked the question on COM 3. Do you want to repeat your question, Councillor Bledsoe?
Yes, certainly. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I do have 2 other headings I would like to bring up, but I would like to leave the floor open to other members to take those if they so wanted. And I'll come back in afterwards if that's okay.
That's fine.
So can I check on this proposal? This proposal is to charge blue badge holders to park in our county. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes, it is.
Does that proposal maintain the subsidised car parking that we offer to staff and councillors, please?
I will pass the question.
I don't think so.
I think Councillor Bledsoe is referring to the staff and councillors parking scheme. Will that be similar in nature or very different?
I don't believe, and I stand to be corrected, maybe Caris could answer this, that is in play at the moment, because since COVID, it was suspended because people were working from home. So I need to ask Caris to clarify that. But with regard to car parking, there's a number of things. Number one is we are looking at charging blue badge holders for parking going forward. We're one of the only authorities in Wales that doesn't charge for in car parks. Yeah, so that's blue badge parking. But we're also still looking at retaining the free car parking for the 3 hours at the Roo and at John Street in Porthcawl. But with regards to the staff and the councillors' subsidised parking, I would have to refer, I'm afraid, back to the Chief Finance Officer to give some clarity on that. I'm not sure what's happened to that scheme, Councillor Bledsoe.
Okay, Caris, can you?
I can come in on that one, Chair, if it helps, just to say that no, that scheme was suspended during the pandemic and we're still not collecting the money in relation to that.
Okay, Councillor Bledsoe.
Yeah.
So just for clarity, and obviously COVID's got in the way of a lot of things, but does the subsidised car parking scheme for staff and councillors remain in place at present?
Yes.
Got 3 free hours.
No, Councillor Bledsoe. That stopped during the pandemic and hasn't been reinstated. But what we do have currently is 3 hours in the Roo and 3 hours in John Street that's been subsidised for visitors to the town centre. That still is in place.
So BC staff and councillors don't get subsidised car parking schemes?
Not currently, no.
Okay, thank you. Because I certainly would not support any move to charge blue badge holders whilst maintaining any scheme that that subsidises BC staff or councillors parking. I would certainly want to prioritise the other way round, and whilst ever we may be one of the last councils to offer free parking for blue badge holders, I believe it's something we should be proud of and try to maintain wherever possible. So thank you, Mr. Chair, for the clarification.
Thank you, Councillor Bledsoe. I'll move on to Councillor Jenkins.
Oh, again, that's a legacy hand. I'm awfully sorry. Raise hand, lower hand.
No worries, Councillor Jenkins. I'll move on to Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to ask a question on page 42, I think it is, column 2, regarding the closure of each of the community recycling centres for sites for 1 day per week. I really wanted to ask about the new facility that's being provided down on Pyle Industrial Estate. Is that not working? Is it soon to be open? Really, that is my question, because obviously money went into that scheme for the alteration of the road system there before you're going into Heelmoston. So I'd like to ask that question first, please. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Clark. Janine?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Clark. Yes, that scheme is complete. It's been complete for 14 months now. I'm afraid we're still awaiting a licence to operate from Natural Resources Wales. It's been very disappointing. I think that's fair to say. That the first licence took 8 months for them to look at, and then there was a small amount of additional information they required and they refused the licence. So what I must make clear is that Kia have to apply for the licence, not BCBC, because Kia are the operator. So Kia have done 2 things. They've put another application in, and they've also put an appeal in to Welsh Government, to PEDW, because they believe they should have been granted a licence with conditions. I know the inspector has been out recently to have a look at that site to determine that appeal for us. So what I would say here, Councillor, we are all ready to start and operate and have been for the last 14 months, but I'm afraid we're having difficulty. We're not the only authority that's having difficulty obtaining a licence to operate from Natural Resources Wales. So we're hoping to get that resolved as quickly as possible. And the idea is we open that brand new facility and then we close the Theakston site because it's out of date now, and then we get a revenue saving from closing Theakston. What I will say though is in the interim period, while that site is not being used. We are using it for waste education. We're starting to do some initiatives with children in the local vicinity to come in and see how we plan to reduce, recycle and move things on. So what we're trying to do, we couldn't do that when it was operating. So we are trying to use that site, but the intention is we get it open as soon as possible going forward. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yes, thank you very much. That does. It's quite disappointing that it's taken so long, obviously. Could I just ask then if, the sites are going to close one day a week, what, has it been decided what particular day,
Well, what we're going to look at, if this savings goes forward, because of course all of these savings are in draft at the moment and they're proposed. If it does go forward, Councillor Clark, what we will do is look at the day where there's the least amount of traffic in each of the sites and take out the day where there's least demand, and then rotate that around the sites to make sure that you always got somewhere where you can take your waste and it doesn't really impact that much. What it may do, and it wouldn't be right if I didn't admit this, it may cause some longer queues at some areas on particular days if we are taking a day a week out. Really, it's not something we want to do, but again, this is Hobson's choice now. When it comes down to making savings from the Communities Directorate, this is something that we think has less risk than others. So yeah, but it maybe Chair, we could ask my head of service, Zach Shell, to come in, because Zach will have additional detail to help Councillor Clark.
I've already spotted him. Zach, do you want to come in?
Yeah, I was just going to reiterate, Janina, a little bit of the process. So in terms of this is a proposal at the moment, and whilst there has been a very broad strategic budget consultation that's taken place, that consultation didn't go into specific suggestions such as this. And typically when we have any proposals that would affect the public directly in a significant way, before implementing them, we would then do a separate consultation on that proposal. So for a savings such as the closure of the one day at each site proposal on the CRCs, there'd be a separate consultation to take into account the views of the public before we then move ahead and finally implement the saving. But yes, the obvious things are exactly as the director has said. We wouldn't look to shut them all on the same day. We wouldn't look to shut them on the busiest day. So it's about selecting those appropriate days. But invariably, as when we made the CRC opening hours shorter previously, that was a previous MTFS saving, we did see, an increase in the queuing time at peak times, not all the time, there's plenty of times where it's quite quiet, but at peak times. And likewise, closure of a day per week, it does push those people into the other days, which means there will, at those peak times, be longer queues.
Okay, thank you, Zach. Does that answer your question, Councillor Clark?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I have got a question on COM 4 and COM 5, but I will give way if somebody wants to ask on COM 3 or whatever.
That's fine. That was going to be my suggestion, Councillor Clark, so thank you for that. I'll get back to you. Councillor Martin Williams.
No, thank you, Chair. I was going to ask about Appendix A and Appendix B, sort of what's not on there rather than a specific. So I don't know whether people with specific questions want to go before me.
Yes, of course. Oh.
Sorry, Chair.
Can you repeat that again?
Do you want to pick that up now? I believe Councillor Williams is asking what's not in Appendix A and what's not in Appendix B, as in what pressures haven't gone forward from communities, and what savings haven't gone forward. Is that?
Well, we're kind of, yeah. Could I? Do you want me to ask it now, then, Chair?
Yes. No. It might as well.
Okay, I'm just finding a quiet corner. Apologies. Yeah. So Appendix A, there's all the cost, the budget pressures there. Members of this committee will remember 2 or 3 weeks ago when we had the extraordinary meeting that Zach mentioned potential cost pressures relating to net zero next year of somewhere in the region of 800,000. I can't see that in Appendix A. So is it reasonable to assume that that 800,000 is on top of what's there, but as has been stated before, it's smeared throughout the directorates? So that's my question on Appendix A. There is a little bit on Appendix B, but do you want to answer that first, someone?
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Councillor Williams. I do think this has been asked and answered in a previous scrutiny meeting and a call-in, but I will ask Janine to answer it as best she can. Thank you.
Yes, no problems. I can answer this, Chair. Yeah, it's been difficult, Councillor Williams, because we had £20 million worth of pressures put forward in all directorates, but only 10 million, as you heard from Caris earlier, have gone forward, which means £10 million worth of pressures have not gone forward currently. And from that £10 million of pressures, there are 16 that belong to communities. Unfortunately, because we've had to make some very tough decisions with the MTFS that we have. And one of them that has not gone forward at this stage is the 2030 support. Now, just to clarify for you, Councillor Williams, for next year, 23-24, we asked for £125,000. And then for 24-25, we asked for 700,000. Now, the reason for that was because within the action plan for 2030, we need to do an awful lot of studies, feasibility studies, and get underneath the detail of things like supply chains and heat studies, the training we need to do, any financial modelling, any development, in order to achieve that target. I know that you understand this. We have to do studies. So what we had asked for is if we could have 125,000 next financial year, in order we can get a couple of officers in to look at what it is we need to model and study going forward. And then the year after, 24-25, the 700,000 was to actually commission those studies. Now, unfortunately, as we stand today, that 125,000 for the initial piece of work has not gone forward as a growth bid for communities. So what we will have to do is look within the resource that we have. We do have an amount of 400,000 that's capital that has gone forward, and what we need to see what we can do is to use that capital to try and match fund and draw in external grant funding. And with that, hopefully, we can make some headway into some of these detailed studies we need to do for 2030. So hopefully that's provided a bit of clarity. There are an enormous amounts of other growth, as all directorates put in very large. You know, we had £20 million worth of growth altogether, right across the council, but only 10 million can go forward. So there are a lot of other schemes, but that one in particular, hopefully that's given you a bit more narrative behind it. So thank you, Chair.
Does that answer your question, Councillor Williams?
Yeah, I think so. I've got a question on Appendix B, if that's okay. And it's interesting. Sorry, there's a bit of a noise. It's quite interesting because you've got some very big ticket items there, and then the one on the very bottom, I forget what the reference number is to do with reduction in white lining, effectively, so road markings, and that's potentially £10,000 saving, and it's an amber, so I guess that's not a high confidence of achieving that 10. So it's good to see small numbers and big numbers. I do recall, however, that in the call-in back, July, when we looked at the Kia contract and the end of that, it was discussed about paying Kia. I think it was 150,000, which would be shared 50-50, so £75,000 to run their fleet on biodiesel. Now, having learned a great deal over the net zero strategy over the last few weeks, and Kia are now exiting in 2027. Do we want to revisit that? Because we're paying £75,000 or something like that for it's a budget pressure for biodiesel that isn't actually going to help us deliver our 2030 target. So is it time to revisit that? So on the one hand, we're looking at £10,000 savings. We've got this other potential 75,000 that it seems we haven't, notwithstanding, of course, the fact that you can't look at everything. But, has everything else been looked at? And is this something that could be looked at again?
Okay, thank you, Councillor Williams. Interesting comments. Janine?
Yeah, so if I can come in, I know that Zach knows considerably more about the detail behind this, but just to assure Councillor Williams, what's been suggested is it's 70,000 for the vegetable biodiesel for the fleet. We've split the cost with Kia, so we're only paying 35,000 of that. It's split 50-50. But what it does, Councillor Williams, it gives us a 95% carbon reduction on that fleet. So it actually does contribute to 2030. So when we look at 35,000 as opposed to a 95% on carbon reduction, it is something we do want to pursue. Now, that doesn't mean that's what we want to pursue for the future completely, because what we would like to do is to look at an ultra-low emission vehicle fleet, be it either electric and or hydrogen in the future. But what it does do in the meantime is give us quite a significant carbon reduction, which counts towards our 2030 for the princely sum of 35,000. So it's dare we say at this moment in time, it's something that we do want to go ahead with. Thank you.
Thank you, Janine. Councillor Spanzik.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And it's a very interesting question because it's one that was touched on at the scrutiny call-in by Zach to try and give some idea of the cost of net zero. And this is an example of what it costs to make that saving, and that was used to extrapolate out, but that's just one example of how difficult it is to cost up a 2030 strategy. It was used to try and extrapolate, but it's wrong to be used for that reason, because it's just one example, and there'll be many more examples in the future. But there is a cost net zero, and that's one example of it.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Spanzik. Okay, I've got Councillor Evans. This will be your first question, and I'll move to Councillor Bledsoe and then back to Councillor Clark. So, Councillor Evans.
Yeah, thank you there, Chair. My question will be on COM8. You know, whilst I appreciate we are in difficult times and difficult times call for difficult decisions to be made, and unfortunately sometimes those decisions can and will be unpopular, I again understand we have an obligation to protect and deliver our statutory services and deliver those to the best that we can. And all non-statutory services should be scrutinised and nothing taken off the table. Therefore, I know some decisions may be unpopular, but there are two questions that I would like to ask regarding fly tipping and the enforcement team. How many prosecutions have taken place? And how many penalty notices are issued on a yearly basis?
Okay, thank you, Councillor Evans. Janine?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Evans. I'm going to bring Zach in momentarily, but just to say the Waste Enforcement Team have only been in place for 18 months. They are a new team, and what they have been concentrated on at the moment is hotspotting and education. And what I mean by hotspotting, we've had very serious concerns in Wild Mill, lots and lots of fly tipping and rubbish and incidents there. So they have been doing numerous community campaigns in Wild Mill in particular, and education elsewhere. So what I will say, over the last 18 months, there hasn't been a great deal of what we would say legal enforcement, but there has been an awful lot of going round to the communities, door knocking, speaking to people about how and when to display their bags, what to put in bags. Now, as a result, it's no coincidence. We've had an improvement in our recycling rate since that team has been out there and doing this work. We are now one of the top recycle authorities in Wales, and our figures have gone over 70% recycling rate. Now, it comes with great pains, I'm afraid, that this team is put in as a saving. It is absolutely not something that officers we'd like to see go forward. Myself or Zach wouldn't like to see this go forward. But we have got to the point in communities, I'm afraid, Councillor Evans, where our teams are extremely lean. There is very little that I can do in terms of savings, and this is a non-statutory service. So what I don't think I can put in any more straightforward words that I don't want to see this go forward. It will have implications, but at this moment in time, it is a draft saving proposal. Now, I wonder whether Zach, Chair, could come in and maybe add a little bit more information to the work of that team.
Okay, thank you, Janine. If Zach's happy, yes, of course.
Yeah, I mean, probably the first thing I'd point out is probably something that's missing in the description, because it does in comments start with removal of waste enforcement team, and probably a mistake, and possibly on my part, to start with the word enforcement, because what it actually is an education and enforcement team, enforcement being the last resort of what they can do. Now, we can use them in a variety of ways. We could concentrate them on litter dropping issues if we wanted to, which is something that can result in an instant fixed penalty. But that isn't the work that we've been having them do over the last year. What we've been having them do is concentrate on mispresented waste. So that's something that may be viewed as fly tipping sometimes, but typically where residents are putting out things incorrectly. We've had, as Janine's touched on, quite a lot of that going on the Wild Mill estate over the years that we've been trying to correct, and generally throughout the borough. The big one being not complying with the 2-bag rule in terms of waste presentations, people putting out an extra bag. Now, they've contacted and dealt with hundreds of people in that, and specific investigations in over 700 cases, but they aren't things that result in an enforcement ticket or penalty notice. They can do, but they have to go through many steps to get there. You basically do an education piece, you do a standard inquiry, you basically issue warnings, and then if somebody keeps on doing something, it could eventually end up in a penalty, which it doesn't. And because they've been concentrating in that field of work, they haven't been issuing penalties over the last year. Not to say that we could use them next year in a different area of work and do more of the fixed penalty type work with litter issues, fly tipping, etc. So the facility is there to be used. But what I would say in the last year where we've used them, and for me, this is an important point, when we put forward the proposal, we knew what they cost us, and the proposal as a saving was put forward. We also knew, and it's in the impacts, that actually there is a negative consequence to the saving, and that we could see the recycling, as a result fall. We could see more fly tipping. What's interesting is, since putting forward that proposal, we can give a bit more quantum to that, because we've had our first full year's worth of recycling and waste figures since we've had them in place. And what we've seen is a 3% swing in terms of improved recycling rate. And we can't say, well, that's down to national trends, because some councils in Wales have seen the opposite happen, and recycling rates have gone backwards. So we really can kind of put that down to those people knocking the doors and encouraging people to comply with the recycling regime in the right way. And it's had a really positive, beneficial effect. Now, that 3% is a nice figure. It's a nice thing that we can talk about, in the public domain and say, look how we're getting better at recycling. But more importantly, our total municipal waste tonnage, each 1% of that basically costs us, if it goes to waste disposal as opposed to recycling, costs us about 100,000 a year. So that's about a £300,000 saving. So I'll be perfectly blunt, at this point in time, I think it's a non-deliverable saving item, because if we get rid of the team, we'll save the money immediately, but over a period of time, I think it's likely that the recycling rate will fall back to where it was, and we'll end up paying as much, if not more, in increased disposal costs. So for me at this point, that would be my position on that item.
Okay, thank you, Zach. Interesting points that you made there. Does that answer your question, Councillor Evans?
Yeah, it has, but obviously I am quite disappointed to hear, and I would have concerns that, we're being asked to scrutinise before all performance results have been identified and issued, in order to make these very difficult, decisions. So, and also, from my understanding, fly tipping is a criminal offence. Is that correct, Zach?
I can't remember. I can tell you the amount of fines. It's about £300 fine, and we typically in Bridgend, when we find fly tipping, we'll issue a warning and give the person, because quite often it's somebody that's had someone come to their house that they didn't know was a dodgy contractor and might have tipped something on the side of the road. They've not been given an opportunity to actually go and rectify it themselves. and then we'd issue a penalty. But as we say, that's not the work we've had this team concentrating on the past year. But we can change the focus. It's not been what they've been doing. What they've been doing is driving up our recycling percentage by tackling compliance with the free bag rule and doing big education campaigns in the Wildmill estate, because they are an education team. But the good thing about having the team is if members felt like, well, what we really need to concentrate on is spot tip fly tippings, then that's what they could concentrate on, albeit you can't always identify where it comes from. There's no address in the fly tipping anyway, which is most of the time. But or we felt we need to have a drive on dog fouling or whatever it is. If we've got that team, we can use them to do whatever campaign we want to do it. And it could be something that then results in lots of fixed penalties or something that doesn't, depending on the area of focus. What we've done is get them in the last year to concentrate on something that doesn't result in lots of fixed penalties, did result in 700 investigations and lots of warning letters, but something that encourages people to actually recycle in the right way. And that's had a real shift in our recycling percentage and a real shift in what would be the cost if it hadn't happened, as I touched on. So that's what they've worked on. But if they're there, we can use them as we see fit going forward through discussions with members, discussions with scrutiny. If they're gone, then we can't use them for anything.
Okay, thank you, Zach. Does that answer your question, Councillor Evans?
Yeah, I suppose as well that I just think of the public purse, because there's the public that are paying, and actually, there are 3 areas that the public contribute to, which are to BCBC, to town and community councils, and also basically to the police and crime commissioners. And from my perspective, if fly tipping is a criminal offence, then who is responsible for actually the criminal activity? It's just a question from my perspective. Do the police get involved? And I suppose it comes down to the area again, is are we utilising our people and our organisations and third sectors to the best potential that we can? We are making these very, very serious and very difficult decisions. And, we haven't got all the results in performance that we need to make these informed decisions.
Okay, no, thank you, Councillor Evans. I think your point's been made. We can discuss this later in the recommendations, if you want to press it further for further questions to Cabinet. I will bring in Councillor Bledsoe now. Thank you for being patient, Councillor Bledsoe.
It's fantastic, and I've actually I would like to thank Zach for his extremely comprehensive answer to Councillor Evans's question there, because this proposal, and I hope to be able to tie up a few loose ends on Com8 as the elected member who covers the Wildmill estate, one of the 3 who has been at the working with Zach and his fantastic team of enforcement. We have just heard in very simple terms why this scrutiny committee cannot allow this proposal to go unchecked with our recommendations forward. We've just had it in figures that the work done since May has saved 3% at £100,000 per percent. It's going to save £300,000. We're being asked to save £200,000. I've only got a GCSE at maths, but I know where I lie on that. But just to tie up that, I would like to read a redacted email that I've received from a resident of Wildmill. This is a financial situation, but please listen to this, fully redacted. I would like to pass on my gratitude to you for the improvements made in the last couple of months around the whole of the Wildmill estate. I've lived in my Sevillin for over 16 years, and this is the cleanest I've ever seen it. Please could you pass my family's gratitude to the BCBC street cleaners and Valleys to Coast, who we witness daily continue to work to keep this place in this condition. It is truly amazing how the place has changed in such a short space of time. Long may it continue and improve further. That's the personal side. That's the public's side to this proposed budget cut. And we can talk about £200,000, but it costs in potentially £300,000 to cover that cost. But there's a personal, and I know all of these decisions are personal, but I wanted to place that email on record. And I don't know if anybody, either officers or cabinet members want to add on what Zach has said, but I think that those figures are stark. And if they don't want to add anything, then I'm happy to move on to a different pressure.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Bledsoe. It has been asked whether anyone else would like to contribute or no. I'll move on. Okay, thank you, Councillor Bledsoe. And Councillor Clark.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Again on COM8, as it's just been mentioned, obviously as we all know, there's quite a number of volunteers who litter pick around the county borough. Can I ask, is that what they pick added to the tonnage? And how well does our organisation work with these volunteers? That's just one, and I'll come back on others after.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Clark. Janine?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Clark. Well, our litter picking initiatives in Bridgend goes through Keep Wealth Tidy. We have an initiative with them, and they train and provide insurance and risk assessments and provide the kit for people who want to volunteer litter pick. And then they provide the arisings, and then they're collected by us. So yes, absolutely. These are the things that we need to look at when we recycle. And actually, this year our recycling has improved because we've been also recycling waste from the street bins. So when you pop your litter in a bin all around the streets of Bridgend, we've been recycling that as well to improve our target. I think that's why we're doing so well, Councillor Clark, because we try and recycle every single bit that we have. So hopefully that answers that bit.
Thank you.
Janine,
I also think, Janine, that some residents do put their household waste in some of the litter bins around the area. Can I ask my question now on COM4?
Yes, we'll go. I think we're playing ping pong between you and Councillor Bledsoe. So I'll keep you online as you're there, and then I'll move to Councillor Bledsoe.
Okay. On COM4, it mentions commercially let 2 wings of Ravenscourt to partner organisations. I'd like to ask how likely does the director think that could happen, especially when even we as an organisation our staff are working from home, etc. You know, how likely is it that we could let 2 wings of Ravenscourt?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Clark. Well, at the moment, the Corporate Landlord Department have put the 2 wings out with commercial property letting companies. They've got them in their marketing, and they are fielding inquiries for these 2 wings. I think they're in good condition. They're bang in the middle of Bridgend. And at the moment, Councillor Clark, there seems to be quite a lot of interest in them. Whether, of course, that'll relate to a let, I don't know. But we will know in due course, I suspect. But it's a great location. It's got parking. It's very secure. So hopefully we will see some space being let in that building. Thanks.
Okay, does that answer your question, Councillor Clark?
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay, if you don't mind, I'll move to Councillor Bledsoe for his next question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And it's COM5, which I know maybe some Porthcawl elected members may want to take a little bit further from me. This is red. This is extremely concerning. The budget proposal for cost savings is around about £51,000, which very conveniently is £1,000 more than we paid to sponsor a high-profile golf event in the area. I would rather say to people who live around the country, come to Porthcawl, it's safe if you go in the sea, rather than come to Porthcawl and see some very rich golfers earn even more money. This is about priorities and costs and choosing where we spend our money. Can I please have some kind of answer as to why we're sponsoring golf events in the borough and withdrawing our essential support for life-saving services?
Janine?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Bledsoe. Well, let me tackle the first one for you, the sponsoring of the Senior Open. When we sponsored it before, it was seen by millions around the world because it's a very popular event, annual event, or sorry, every 3-4 year event. And also there was a significant amount of visitors that came to the event. Now, when an event this large comes into the borough, what happens is we have to do a number of things, including litter picks, road closures, and we have to ensure that the borough can deal with additional traffic, additional visitors, etc. Really important. So what would happen is we would have to do those services anyway. So what we have done is done a sponsorship deal with the Senior Open itself, and we've agreed that we would pay £50,000 over 2 years, 25 last year, 25 this year, to be seen as a senior sponsor, and then that money is then used for the things we would have done anyway. It is used for the extra litter pick. It is used for the road control anyway. So whilst it does seem that we are given the money for nothing, we're absolutely not. It's only money we would have spent regardless because that event came into town. Now, as a sponsor, what that means is we get the benefit of having BCBC's logo out there. We have the benefit of being in the sponsor's brochure. There is other positive things that comes with it, and we can associate ourselves with that very prestigious event. So whilst it does seem, yes, why are we doing it? And to be fair with you, I asked exactly the same question when I came into the organisation. I did say, why do we have the appetite to do this? Now, I understood the benefits from it, but I needed to understand what the opportunity cost was, which is what you've just discussed. But we would have to do that infrastructure work, that cleaning, that parking anyway. Excuse me. So by doing it as part of the sponsorship, we get added benefit. So that's the answer to the Senior Open. There are millions of pounds worth of advertising and benefit that comes with it. Now, with regard to the RNLI, it's red for a reason, Councillor Besser, because it is something we absolutely do not want to put forward as a saving. This has been a very, very, very difficult decision. And the reason for that is the RNI have written to us recently, and they've asked for an increase in the contribution that we provide because they've given us some statistics of the work they have done. They do tremendously good work. Last year, they've given us some incidents. For instance, at Rest Bay, there were 169 incidences in total. The water-based incidents, 192 in total, that's all beaches. Missing persons, 43. They've done some first aid, minor first aid, 25 people, and major first aid, 34 people. Now that is spread between Treco, Sandy Bay and Rest Bay. And what we are proposing with this is that we reduce the amount of support we give towards Rest Bay. It's not something that we have done lightly, but it's not, again, Councillor Bletzer, what I must say is this is a non-statutory responsibility. It has a massive impact on the beach, on safety and the welfare and the popularity of the beach. It isn't something that we've put forward lightly. And we have since had the RNI come back to us asking for additional monies. Because of a number of incidents that have taken place, they're asking us for some more money, not less. So first of all, I don't want to make this cut, I'm afraid. It's a proposal. And secondly, how I would fund additional monies for the RNLI, I don't know either. So that is the genuine narrative from myself about this saving. It's been a difficult one, I'm afraid.
Okay, thank you, Janine. Councillor Spanzik.
Thank you, Chair. And just first to correct the narrative, this is not giving 50,000. This is not, golf is not anywhere, but there's nothing said about, it's not about giving money to Porthcawl Golf. It's about investing in the economy and the viability of Porthcawl and the wider County Borough of Bridgend, which I hope everybody would welcome, especially the businesses in Porthcawl and Bridgend who can benefit and will benefit from tourism and economic development. But the item we looked before today, and again to correct, it's not a proposal for the 51,000. It's 51,000 the budget. The proposal is 38,000, and the key word is proposal. This is only a proposal. We're here to listen today. I'm far from happy that that is even in there in the first place. It's there. It's a proposal. I look forward to hearing the views and recommendations of scrutiny following this meeting.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Spanzik. Does that answer your question, Councillor Betso?
It does, and I'm happy to pass over to Councillor Clark, who I know is a local member. But before I do, can I just seek clarity? Did we stop any financial support for the Elvis Festival, which is also very well known nationally and internationally and draws people to the area?
Okay.
Yes, Councillor Bletzer, we don't have a events budget going forward, so we're not able to support events now going forward.
So there was a choice made that the golfing one was good for the area, but the Elvis one isn't?
No, Councillor Bletsoe, back to my earlier narrative, we would have to spend that money anyway on that event because we have to do road closures, we have to put additional staff on, we have to do litter pick. Now, so we would have to spend that money anyway. So we've chosen to use that money as a form of sponsorship so we get all the additional benefits of economic development, the TV coverage worldwide, etc., for tourism and economic development. When it comes to the Elvis Festival, and it's not just the Elvis Festival, I would hasten to add, there was a tourism budget, an events budget. The tourism department in BCBC is one person. It was a much larger tourism department previously. It's now one person. It's been cut. We did have a large tourism budget. We don't anymore. We used to have the last amount of budget we had was 30,000, and now that has been cut. Now that 30,000 was used previously to look at support for events. One of the largest events that is held annually has been the Elvis Festival. And what we have done in previous years is used some of that event money to put on, for instance, road closures, first aid, etc., for the Elvis Festival. We've helped support that. But unfortunately, I don't have any monies going forward for events next year, so I'm unable to provide that support going forward. So hopefully that explains the difference between the two.
Thank you, Janine, and I hope you know that my line of scrutiny is not based around you or your position. I hope you know that.
Oh, I know that, Councillor Betts, I know.
Thank you, Janine. I think I need to give somebody else the chance to speak. Thank you.
Councillor Spans, with your hands up. Is that a legacy hand? No, that's fine. No worries. Councillor Clark, I know you're keen to speak on this subject.
Yes, thank you, Chair, very much. Obviously, the RNLI are a charity. They're not funded by government. They're only funded by the support of members of the public. I have to say that I was quite alarmed when Janine mentioned that it was West Bay where the contribution would be reducing, because West Bay is the most dangerous beach there is in Porthcawl, mainly because of the rip tides that occur on West Bay, and of course because it's a rocky area, whereas you haven't really got that on Treco and Sandy Bay so much. So it is one of the most dangerous beaches, can I say. I would say quite a dangerous beach around this area, along the South Wales coast. So I was quite alarmed at hearing that. Obviously, I wouldn't want to see removal of the lifeguard service in Porthcawl. What price can be placed on a life? Janine has given the statistics that happened last year, 2022, which I also requested this morning. So I take on board what she says, but removing the lifeguards, there is no guarantee by removing the contribution, I should say, that the RNLI will man those beaches.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Clark. Is there any anyone want to reply to that? No, I'll add in. Chair, I'll take some latitude. Obviously I'm a member of Her Majesty's Coast Guard Search and Rescue in Porthcawl. These statistics are probably not going to change. It's an incredibly busy area in Porthcawl. If these are removed, my team of 12 in Porthcawl and the lifeboat crew will have to tackle this with our flank teams from Clantwit Major and Aberavon, who have their own beaches as well. So it will present a challenge for Her Majesty's Coast Guard and the RNLI lifeboat crew. I suppose we'll have to cope if this is to go ahead, but I would like members to listen to what I've said and the Cabinet members that are here. It's incredibly difficult to get around Porthcawl in the summer when we're responding to calls, especially on the roads, whether that's the lifeboat crew trying to get to their station, the Coast Guard team trying to get to their station. So it will have an impact quite severely in Porthcawl, but both teams are resilient if this goes forward, and I'm sure we'll cope as best as we can. Okay, thank you. Councillor Clark, was there anything else, or
Well, yes, thank you, Chair. Just to add on to what you say, I mean, you're saying about the lifeboat and the Coast Guard, and yes, they are organisations that help in the saving of lives. But if someone is drowning at Rest Bay or being pulled in by the rip current, there's no chance.
No, I would concur on that. Yes, Councillor.
There's no chance, and they're going to be pulled round because of the rip currents. They're going to be pulled round the rocks, and believe me, if you come upon those rocks, your feet or whatever is shredded. Rest Bay is very, very dangerous. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. I have a hand up from Councillor Evans.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah. Obviously, yes, I would be concerned with regards to Rest Bay especially, because I want to share when beaches are most vulnerable, well, they're vulnerable all year round, but in the summer, more people use them. And the experience of Rest Bay is that at high tide, especially there is no beach. And these days, paddle boarding is such a popular sport. And the concerns are when entering the water, there are chances of children being knocked over. It needs to be managed and monitored carefully, especially at high tide on Rest Bay. So obviously, I do have concerns around Rest Bay. All beaches are dangerous places. The water is a dangerous place, full stop. But obviously, when people do use it, and with the paddle boards being so large and no entry apart from a slip road, no beach at Rest Bay, it causes further danger. So I would like that to be noted.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Evans. Unless anyone else in the room, I think that concludes that part of the thing. Well, it's 9 minutes to 6 now, so I would like to get through this bit quite quickly so we can have a break if possible. So our next point is 31 to 32, council-wide budgets, fees and charges. Is there anyone who wants to speak on that? No. Okay. Council reserves, pages 32 to 33. I'm looking at you, Councillor Jenkins. I think this may be your...
Yes, thank you. Yeah. Thanks for coming back on that, Chair there. Yeah. Well, obviously, I, like many other people, thousands of taxpayers at these times of austerity, and I do sympathise with our officers and the Cabinet for, the way they got to manage this. But we've been managing something like this now for some 13 years, as the Deputy Leader said. And of course, we can blame central government, but it's not going to change at the moment. So, it's the level of reserves. But if I ask a specific question first, so that I can have some clarity, reading the legislation, because sometimes it can be contradictory. But looking at the reserves, is in line with the medium-term financial principle, the council fund will normally be maintained at the level of 5% of the council's net budget, excluding schools, etc. Excuse me. So, well, I took it on the overall net budget of the 343 million or whatever, and that works out at 17.5 million. Now, watching reserves, I can imagine as being a new council, they just didn't put in 114 or 115 million pounds last year into reserves. It's been built up, as the financial officer have told us, over years. So does this 5% go in there every year, or is it discretionary? And I'm looking at some of the savings here, the costs. And then we've got earmarked reserves. Well, given some of the Welsh Government guidelines as well, and they define usable reserves, I can't see a reference to usable reserves. I've got earmarked reserves, and I see quite a number of sums, although there's a reduction from column 1 to the last column of £101 million based on, the 30th of December. We're only 30 million quid short in reserves of Cardiff City Council, and on such a large council as that. obviously, I would like to ask the question, second question probably is, how do we monitor when you put in this money aside for reserves, if it's being used, right? And how is it being used? If it's not being used and carried forward, there's no need to have a reserve in my mind, because you've calculated year on year for a reserve, which you're not using all of, right? Except for the essential things such as insurance, our capital programs, and things like that, right? That things can't be, probably some of it can be defined, others can't. But there is carrying all this money forward. I see in the two directorates as well, where the total corporate resources, where you got the chief executive having like departments having £6 million odd pound reserves. So that's question two. How can we monitor this, and how can we actually say, well, look, we don't need all that in reserves? I understand the principle of reserves and the I could say accountancy view on why we should keep reserves and how, but given you have statements that say any prudent council should be able to manage on relatively low reserves.
Okay.
The West Government statement again stated that they expect year on year that the local councils to reduce their reserves. Probably another question is,
okay,
what is the capital? What is the interest on the money we have in reserves every year?
Okay, thank you, Councillor Jenkins. So I think
sorry about that. I got trying to get them all in. I've been waiting ages, but
yeah, no, I appreciate that, Councillor Jenkins. So if I'm right, I think we've got three questions. Is the 5% reserves added on year? What pressures have the local authority have from Welsh Government guidelines on reserves? And I missed your last question, but we'll start with those two. And we'll go from there. If anyone, I know Caris has her hand up.
Would you like me to take those questions, Chair?
Yes, if you could, please, Caris. Thank you.
Yes, certainly. I think I've noted them down, Councillor Jenkins, but if I haven't done, obviously prompt me. So the first one was about the 5%. So what that is referring to is our general fund, our council fund. And what that is in effect is a working balance for the council, and it's there. It's not allocated for anything in particular, and it's there as a working balance. If anything changes during the year, we have some money there that we can allocate. I just want to reassure you, Councillor Jenkins, that's not a contribution that we make year on year into our reserves. That council fund, like all of the other reserves, has been built up over the years. And the 5% is the guidance with regards to how much we should hold in that fund, as I said, for our general running. It's not an allocation we make every year. It's a static year. Some years we don't put any more money into the council fund because we do stick to that guidance of about 5%. Now, I hope that explains that one. The other one you mentioned was about, I suppose, you mentioned earmarked reserves and usable reserves. What's the difference? I think some of that is terminology. The earmarked reserves is money that, again, we put away over many, many years. They've been built up, and they're earmarked because in the past decisions have been made about the priorities that the council wants to follow. And therefore money has been put aside so that we can actually meet those priorities when they become a reality. Now, you'll know from the discussions that we had in council, in fact we had one last week, didn't we, that quite a bit of our capital programme is supported via earmarked reserves. And some of the regeneration issues that Janine has mentioned during today's meeting are funded or match funded via money that we have in earmarked reserves. So they are there for a reason, and each one of them is detailed as to what we have decided we can use it for. Now, obviously, those decisions can change and priorities can change. Therefore, we do actually review the reserves on a regular basis to make sure that they are still needed and that the priority that they've been earmarked against is still a priority for us as a council. And we do monitor from a financial point of view that they are actually being used. So if there is a reserve there that seems to have been static for some time and there are no plans against it for it to be used, then we do query that with the service, and we will un-earmark them, if that is a term, but we will release them into the wider capital elements, if you like, so that they can be used somewhere else. So we do have a very regular monitoring of our reserves. In fact, we do it 3 or 4 times a year, and you'll see a report go through when we close the report at the accounts at the end of the year. You also asked a question about whether there are pressures on us to run those reserves down. It's a decision really for the council with regards to the level of money that it keeps in reserves. I think I would point you to things like the, unexpected things, which I think have already been mentioned in the course of this afternoon's meeting, such as the pandemic, which with all the planning that any of us could have done, we'd never have foreseen. But reserves can be used to help you with issues like that. And for many councils, they were actually used quite heavily during the pandemic to help them out. So we can run them down. I think my advice to you would be to be very careful about how you did that. And I know I've been asked the question before about whether they can be used to prop up this revenue budget. The example I give is that a lot of private individuals have savings, don't they? And you spend them as you choose, but once you've spent them, they've gone. So you shouldn't use them to prop up your revenue budget, because it might help you out for next year, for example, but then you've still got to fill the hole in that budget the following year. And that would either mean that you're not making difficult decisions now, you'll have to make them in 12 months' time, or you have to change your budget for the following years. So I would strongly advise against using your reserves to prop up a big hole in your budget. I think that answers the questions you asked, Councillor Jenkins, but obviously, tell me if I've missed anything.
No, well, obviously I don't agree with that. I understand the principle behind it, but I don't agree with the rationale at the end of the day, because we have reserves, and you haven't really answered whether we have reserves more than we actually need, because we're surmising on things that may or may not happen. I understand you have to look to a future to a certain extent, but no one can predict the future, right, at the end of the day. But I will accept your explanation for it, but I don't agree with it. And I asked the question then, is how much does the council make by holding this amount of reserves? But go back to my other question. It does say the Welsh Government define usable reserves as that can be applied to fund expenditure or reduce local taxations, etc. So they advise that reserves can be used for it. I know that you say you don't want to use it because once it's gone, it's gone. But at the end of the day, we have to face up to reality. The inevitable is coming sooner or later, unless a miracle happens or a complete change in the whole economic situation of our country and government. So by trying to say things, we managing, sometimes there will come a breaking point, and we will be facing that. But what is the interest that the council makes then in money?
Okay, thank you, Councillor Jenkins. I'll pass that back to Caris, and I'll bring in the Deputy Leader. Thank you.
Sorry, Councillor Jenkins, I missed that question that you gave me about interest figures. What I can do is, I don't have that figure to hand with me this afternoon, but I can certainly send it out to members, the interest that we're earning this year, those that we've got invested.
Right, and I wanted to mention a question, I can't see that, on our loans. Is it possible to call in these loans? And could you tell me the amount of interest per annum that we pay in on what an expected up to 60 million could be the next financial year in borrowing?
Councillor Jenkins, that won't be a question for this committee unless Caris wants to bring it in. I do want to make
it's relevant to a budget in the whole scale, isn't things, isn't it?
Unless Caris wants to answer it now, I do want to make progress.
Okay, fair enough.
Can I suggest, Chair, that I provide that outside of the meeting?
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Caris.
Thank you.
Okay. Deputy Leader.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'd just like to reassure Councillor Jenkins that when Wales Audit came in, they were quite happy with our reserves figure. What I would advise is that we have at least 6 months' pay for our staff, particularly if we have to make any of them redundant. The reality is that should we have to do that, we are in a serious situation, and not one of us as members, if we issue Section 144 notices, will be sitting here in the chamber because not one of us will be elected anymore. That isn't a position that I want to be in. We do have to set a balanced budget. I would expect the council to keep 5% in reserves to maintain the payment for our staff. And I would advise you that it has been a position where another council in England did issue Section 144 notices and they didn't have the reserves to pay their staff even. Thank you very much, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Deputy Leader. Councillor Martin Williams.
Thank you, Chair. Just something I've commented on a number of times, but is it now time, and in particular respect to communities, but I guess it's a wider issue as well, that we use our reserves, our capital reserves, rather than revenue reserves, a bit more nimbly and a bit more cleverly, and where possible, referring back to something that the Cabinet Member for Communities referred to about insourcing rather than outsourcing. Are there opportunities? Are we looking for opportunities where we can make capital investments to save revenue? So whether that's buying equipment that we're currently hiring, or putting solar panels down, that whole thing. I mean, the industry I work in is capital intensive, and that ability to turn capital into revenue savings, which pay back over the short to medium term, is something that they're very interested in. And is it something that, as a council, we're looking at now, and if not, should we be looking at more aggressively over the coming period?
Yes. Okay, thank you, Councillor Williams. I've got the Deputy Leader who would like to come in here.
Thank you very much, Chair. Councillor Williams, it's something that we already do. I would advise all our members to be exceptionally careful when we are looking to outsource anything to save money. We do not meet any socio-economic duty then. We have to be very careful that whatever we do is of benefit to the whole community, and people just don't make profits at the expense of their workforce. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Deputy. Yeah, and Janine.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, Chair. Can I come
sorry,
in?
Councillor Williams. If I can let Janine Nightingale speak, and then I'll bring you back in.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Williams. We already do a significant amount of that built into the capital programme and revenue. For instance, we did the Salex loan, where we did all of the work on the schools, put in energy efficient measures into the schools, pay back over 6 years for energy schemes. We've changed all the light bulbs in all the street lamps across Bridgend, 16,000 lamps to save money. We're doing fleet replacement. There's money in the budget to replace our fleet out for ULEV to save carbon reduction as well as running costs. So there's a significant amount of that already programmed into the capital programme. So thanks.
Okay, thank you, Janine. Councillor Williams.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I mean, I just wanted to, the Deputy Leader completely misunderstood my point, but thankfully Janine got it. My point is that we need to use our capital reserves far more cleverly, and that probably involves insourcing, not outsourcing, which sees revenue go out the door. So actually, the Deputy Leader and myself seem to be in some agreement, but she did seem to misunderstand the point I was making.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Williams. I have Councillor Jenkins. I am keen to make progress, Councillor Jenkins, and you have already spoken on this before. Unless you bring anything, unless it's urgent.
Well, all right. No, I just want to come back, even though the Director of Communities had raised an issue with the, or referred to education and all, and we've also discussed previously, obviously, the carbon reduction. There was a question I wanted to pose to her, but I posed it to the Education Department over years, and nobody's taken any notice. So.
Oh, okay, no, all right, I'll leave that there then, Councillor Jenkins, as there isn't a...
Yes,
yeah, okay, thank you very much. Okay, so that's Council Reserves done. We've got two more. I'm keen to try and get us out for a break quickly. So we've got the capital programme and capital financing strategy, capital receipts and prudential unsupported borrowing. Is there any questions there? I've got I've got Zach coming in. Did you want to speak?
Yeah, it's up to you if you want me to come back on this, Chair. I just thought I'd bring it to your attention. It's up to you then, because we are past this item. It's just going back to the, I think it was COM8 on the RNLI saving. Councillor Clark asked for some statistics with regard to the work of the RNLI and interventions that took place. Whilst we've been on the call, I managed to look up a report for the complete year of 2022, and I have got some headline numbers that I could share if you'd like.
I
appreciate we're past that point in the agenda.
No, I know Councillor Clark has had her own copy of the statistics.
Oh, great.
That's fine. I will ask Councillor Clark, are you happy with the data that you've got now, or would you appreciate some input from Zach?
Well, if it's the same data that Janine read out, then I think we've all got the same data. But thank you very much, Zach.
Cheers.
Okay, thank you, Zach. Thank you for your opportunity. But I think Councillor Clark's happy. Councillor Bledsoe.
Hi, Mr. Chair. Yeah, are we moving on to the next item? Yeah.
Yeah. So capital programme, financing strategy, capital receipts, and prudential borrowing.
I'm sure many people, including yourself, would be glad to know this is the last note I've got written down for myself. And there's a lot of budget pressures in this document. I mean, two of them are specifically mentioned in here. We have the impact of the war in Ukraine. I do apologize to all. Ukraine, cost of living crisis. It wasn't so long ago that a lot of these documents would come back and say about the fallout from Brexit. And those are all situations outside of our control. However, I believe that there are decisions within our control that could have led to some budgetary pressures. So I would like to know, of all of the very difficult decisions, and I certainly don't expect an officer to answer this one, I would expect or hope a cabinet member may want to. Of all of the very, very difficult decisions that have been put in front of us today, and we're being told that none of us want to look at these cost savings, how many of these proposed cost savings could have been avoided if last year's administration didn't freeze council tax in an election year?
Okay, anyone want to take that?
None, I would suggest, Councillor Bledsoe. We didn't know the financial position we were going to be in this year. Nobody knew about the cost of living crisis. We certainly didn't know about the procurement exercise and the increase in costs. I don't think we would have saved any money, sorry. But I can't speak for the whole administration. I was only in it for 3 months.
Okay, thank you, Deputy Leader. Anyone else? Are we happy? Yes. Okay. Councillor Bledsoe, are you happy with that response?
I'm amazed that if we hadn't generated more money, then we wouldn't be. I believe that 1% on council tax is equivalent to £800,000 in. So if council tax hadn't been frozen in an election year, I would assume that we'd have more money at this moment in time and wouldn't be having to make these costs.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Betts. I think that's more.
Thank you,
yes. Okay, I've got the Deputy Leader.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bledsoe. Actually, we've actually taken in less money due to the council tax, and we get less council tax coming in as well. So I don't think a 1% would have made any difference at all last year. Indeed, we were told that things were levelling out and we wouldn't be in a period of austerity, and then we've had a cost of living crisis. Westminster could have protected us in relation to energy costs, in relation to our schools and our care provision. They chose not to until this week. That is the first time that we are protected against the tariff in relation to our care homes and our education sector. And if the Westminster had put that funding in place for all of us, so it didn't matter what resident or what business you were, then actually we would have already saved that money exponentially already this year. Thank you very much, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Deputy Leader. Councillor Bledsoe, are you happy with that response? Councillor Bledsoe? No, okay, we'll move on. Okay, I've got the Wellbeing of Future Generations Wales Act 2015 assessment. If anyone wants to make any comments on that, otherwise I'll bring this section to a close and call a break. No? Okay, brilliant. Okay, I'll call it. It is 6:15. I will, yes, and I'll call a 50-minute break. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Cabinet members and officers for attending. this meeting for us. Thank you very much. I will see you at 6:30. Thank you.